Did you see the Woody Allen doc? I know you did. Have you seen it yet, Jerry?
I have.
No, I haven't watched it. No, we recorded it, but I haven't watched it.
I think it's spectacular. It's as good, I think, as the George Harrison doc. In some instances.
Wow. Okay. Because I thought the George Harrison doc was just.
The Harrison doc is obviously because I'm sure Scorsese had a bigger budget. I mean, it's more cinematic. It's more visually interesting. But the as far as a character portrait, portrait, the Woody Allen doc is pretty good. It's pretty amazing in some of the instances of what they do. I mean,
I think it is, but it's interesting how the first 2 hours goes up to Stardust Memories, and then the last hour and a half just seems like it just races through the remaining 32 years of his career. But I enjoyed the heck out of it, and they touch all bases, but it just makes Woody Allen a more fascinating character, and almost fascinating for his simplicity.
Mm-hmm.
Because he doesn't claim to be a man of any great depth or particular interest,
His self-deprecation it's now part of his shtick, and it disarms anyone before anyone can offer any criticism or anything. But you can tell in that first hour, particularly with where he's budding writing comic, and then he gets on stage, and we see his talk show appearances, and that whole 1 year that he talks about that they forced him on stage. And, present day, he's talking about, they just forced me to do it. I didn't want to do it. I hated doing it and all this stuff. And then we see these clips, and yes, he looks uncomfortable, and he probably doesn't want to do it. But you can also tell that he is very aware of that this is going to make him successful, and he's extremely ambitious those years.
Yeah.
And so he's in a ring with a kangaroo. So he knows. That's the kind of the genius. That is the genius of Woody Allen, is that he's able to do that self-deprecating thing, and yet you look closely, you can see how ambitious he was in those early years.
Well, he still has ambition, obviously.
Yeah.
To be at this stage of his life and to have reinvented himself in a way as this international director is ambitious.
And I do believe him when he says it's the process of working that's important and not the final product. I do believe him when he says that. When he says he works by the quantity theory that some will hit better than others. And it's amazing. That scene in the second part where he has that drawer and he pulls out the pieces of paper with all these ideas and he reads one, and you can kind of see, okay, I can see that being a start of a Woody Allen film. You can kind of fill in the blanks of certain things, and it's just it's pretty spectacular. And I was kind of stunned on how, for the brief segment that is on the scandal, how kind of they don't pull any punches on that. They really don't pull any punches. I love that there's a great montage where basically everyone they interviewed, unbeknownst to each one of them, they all say, Woody's very good at compartmentalizing, and it's just his montage.
Because he never stopped working throughout that whole scandal. It was 100%. But it does feel, that second half does feel very rushed to me. And it feels like in the way that and I wrote the director, I sent him a message but complimenting him on the documentary. But it feels like it's so rushed that transition, when they start to talk about the scandal, feels almost out of place, like you haven't been situated to hear that part yet. But it almost feels like, okay, we got to cover this now, so let's get this out of the way.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get back to the movies.
I think I think the story that's missing, because they pretty much cover every film at some point. I found it interesting that the one film, to me, in the scandal part, they cover Husbands and Wives and they cover Bullets Over Broadway. They don't talk about Manhattan Murder Mystery, about how Mia Farrow showed up on set ready, and Alan's like, "What are you doing here?" and basically called in Diane Keaton as a favor, They don't really get into that part of it, But who knows? Maybe they just.
It's interesting how that's such an entertaining movie too, in the midst of all
this chaos. It's an entertaining movie, and like I said, it's kind of spectacular in that I think it's one of the rare Woody Allen films where the couple at the beginning is the same couple at the end. It doesn't end, with a split. I mean, that's kind of amazing. I tell you, the I was kind of startled that they got an interview with Sean Penn. And then the way he says, he goes, Woody has, he goes, I worked on the film, I gave the performance, and he goes, I think I did okay because Woody hasn't talked to me one way or the other ever since, whether I did it good or not.
And they don't show any clips from one of my favorite Woody Allen movies, which is Another Woman. But it's impossible. I mean, he's made over 40 movies, so. But Scorsese's in the documentary, tying it back to Scorsese, and he talks about. There's a great scene where he talks about the New York as shown in Manhattan, and he talks about just how glorious it is and how romantic, and he says, but it seemed like a foreign country to me because that is absolutely not the New York that I know, that I express in my own movies. Which is true. I mean, that's both ends of the spectrum. You have the two quintessential New York filmmakers, and they couldn't be more different.
And he has the great line. He goes, Mean Streets is how I see New York, and Taxi Driver is how I think about New York. Taxi Driver is like my mental state, of New York. And, and so that's the great line that he has describing his New York. His New York is different than Woody's New York, and that's different from Spike Lee's New York, which is also different from Sidney Lumet's, bureaucratic New York.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but you do see where Spike Lee is influenced by Scorsese,
right,
and Sidney Lumet. Mm-hmm. But Woody Allen is the odd man out among those four New York filmmakers. And
then you see how, unfortunately, Edward Burns is inspired by Woody Allen.
That's a great line.
And I say that as someone who likes The Groomsmen, but never mind.
if you read anything on Woody Allen, get the Eric Lax book. He's a biographer. He's featured in the documentary. There's a book that he did. Woody Allen talks about every single movie. I mean, it's over 800 pages, this book, and it's all kind of Q&A format, movie by movie. It is great. And what interests me, too, is like how he gets the cast that he gets. Obviously, everyone wants to work with him, but he says he gets told no all the time, and he doesn't take it personally. It doesn't mean he won't try again. But with Deconstructing Harry, he tried to get anybody to play that role other than him. He went to Albert Brooks, and Albert Brooks said, no, I'll be playing you. I don't feel comfortable doing that. And then he went to De Niro, and De Niro turned it down. But I kept thinking, man, what an interesting thing that would be for De Niro to play that role, that despicable role.
And wasn't Hoffman almost going to do it, but he dropped out?
Hoffman would have been beautiful in it, too.
That would have been very interesting.
Well, and the other thing, it's funny you mentioned is, so I watched part one, I guess, Monday, and my sister's in town, and you'll love this, Jamie. My sister's a big fan, and I have the Netflix Instant, and so she wanted to see Author. So we watched Author, Al. And thinking of Al as that playwright, you kind of think, add 25 years to that, or 15 years, 82 to 97, Al is Harry Block in Deconstructing Harry. That might have been kind of spectacular. That might have been kind of spectacular.
And speaking of him being a quintessential New York director, he's worked with very few of the quintessential New York actors.
Yeah,
if you think he's never worked with De Niro, he's never worked with Pacino,
Nicholson, or Hoffman.
Hoffman, yeah.
So he's never. The only one of that generation that he worked with was in Another Woman. He worked with Gene Hackman. That's the only one. But the biggies, he's never. It's kind of interesting that he never got the big guys to ever do one of his films.
Yeah, he probably can't afford them. I mean, I'm sure that it's that he can't afford them, and they don't want to lower their asking price for movies that they might feel are too slight. So they go off and do Everybody's Fine or The Bucket List, movies that aren't as slight.
It's kind of amazing that he was able to get
Excuse me.
Not only the before he became the house the world phenomenon, but get him to do a great parody of himself. It was Leonardo DiCaprio for Celebrity.
That's right, yeah.
So, DiCaprio's 10 minutes is the best part of Celebrity. It's when the movie does come alive the most. It's DiCaprio's sequence. It's kind of amazing.
Well, it doesn't feel like, in terms of with actors, it almost feels like a rite of passage, I think.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you reach a certain age and, okay, it's time to get my driver's license, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like actors like, I haven't done my Woody Allen movie yet.
Well, to me, the one actor that has to do a Woody Allen film, it's got to be Jesse Eisenberg. I think of a young actor who was born to be a Woody Allen protagonist.
That's
right.
true.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's Jesse Eisenberg. And it's funny, of all the actors in these last 20-plus years that Allen has had to play kind of the Woody Allen role, being Owen Wilson and Kenneth Branagh, I've always thought the best one, he only did 2, but I thought he could have done more, was John Cusack.
Yes.
Right.
I mean,
yeah.
who would have thought that Cusack was a good Woody Allen compared to Branagh, who's a terrible Woody Allen?
There's a lot of truth in what Aaron says. Branagh is a horrible, not the greatest stand-in. How do we feel about, though, speaking of stand-ins, Jason Biggs? I mean, I'm not crazy about that movie, but how do we feel? Because on paper, he looks like the perfect stand-in.
It's funny. That's like one of like 3 Allen films that I haven't seen, and it's funny that film. Apparently it's very divisive because I know Tarantino has it as his favorite Woody Allen film of like the last 18 years.
Yeah.
So, and I know
but he's the only one.
But I think that's just to be.
I know a lot of. Well, I actually have friends who really like anything else and think it's actually underrated. I do know.
I watched it again recently.
From him, it's actually a daring film in one instance because it's, I think, the only film where he outrightly deals with anti-Semitism.
Right.
And that one scene, I think it's the one movie where he really deals with it overtly. I mean, and also it has the odd Woody Allen ending that the character leaves New York to go to Los Angeles at the end.
Right.
And I always find it. I mean, I get shrugged my shoulders when I meet the few critics, the detractors who I meet who think Max Point is overrated. I think Max Point is a Woody Allen masterpiece. I think
it's a solid film, just solid storytelling, just right on.
Well, I'm one of those guys.
Yeah, well. I like Match Point. I like Cassandra's Dream just as much, though, I'll be honest with you.
I think it's a perfectly strong movie, Match Point, but I think it was done so much better in Crimes and Misdemeanors.
We've had this. I mean, I like 9/10. I love 9/10 of Crimes and Misdemeanors. I really don't like the narration from the philosopher that ends the film. That whole little motif of that philosopher that he's wanting to make this documentary about. I think Max Point. The reason Max Point is such a stronger film is because it doesn't have that little philosophical moralizing kind of ending. I think the fact that Max Point ends on such an oblique note.
Well, that's a tone that characterizes many, many, many of his movies, though.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the narration of Vicky Cristina is very much overly literate. People speak like, college professors reading out of a book in his movies. They don't speak like,
right.
Scorsese characters do.
It works better than others. I mean, people underrate Small Time Crooks, which I think is a terrific comedy.
Oh, I do too. I think so too.
Compared, and then, I do think his worst film is Jade Scorpion.
Me
it's
too.
not so much it's a bad story. It's just that Helen Hunt can't do that kind of flapperish comic.
Mm-hmm.
She's just terrible at it. And Hollywood, and same thing with Hollywood. Those two films are kind of just hard.
You know what else is interesting about miscasting? In the documentary, they talk about when he's recast movies.
Mm-hmm.
Michael Keaton in Purple Rose of Cairo, and the entire cast of September. He reshot the whole movie with a different cast, which is interesting.
That whole Purple Rose story, I'd heard that story. It's just Jeff Daniels is perfect.
Interiors, rather. No, not interior.
No, it's September.
It's September. Okay.
It was September. He should have recast Interiors, but it's funny about Purple Rose of Cairo. I think Jeff Daniels is perfect for that film. It's one of his great performances.
Mm-hmm.
But you do kind of wonder, how, what was Michael Keaton like? Because, that was Michael Keaton kind of getting at his peak. But then when you hear the answer that, well, he was too contemporary, you can kind of see that. You can kind of see.
I absolutely see it.
Yeah.
There's an innocence and a naivete that Jeff Daniels brings to it.
Mm-hmm.
That Michael Keaton's just too streetwise and sarcastic. It's impossible for him to tone that down in a way.
Yeah, Michael Keaton would have been a great deconstructing Harry. A Harry Block.
Yeah.
He might have been a fun Harry Block, as opposed to the naivete of a Broadway Baxter, Jeff Daniels.
Yeah. Broadway Danny Rose is another great Woody Allen movie. He's made so many great ones.
He's made so many great ones, and I'm actually, it's funny, how they, the critics, they say critics and audiences, responded to certain films more than others. I actually prefer Stardust Memories over Interiors, and I think Zelig is a half hour short, stretched out to about,
right.
an hour and a half. I think Zelig loses it. You get the joke real quick, and I actually think Interiors is terrible. I've seen it. It's unwatchable.
Yeah, a lot. You're not alone in that.
I think it's unwatchable. I think if Interiors had gotten the drubbing it should have gotten, I think people would have understood how interesting Stardust Memories was. Stardust Memories is a really interesting, good transition.
Oh yeah, I love it. I think it's a wonderful film.
But yeah, so it's one of those. I prefer Another Woman as far as Bergman riffs go compared to.
Me too. That's my favorite underrated Woody Allen movie. Movie that's never even talked about. Yeah, it's always been. But ironically, just like Scorsese, Woody Allen is now a commercial director.
Yeah, that's true.
That's something. Of all of his movies to hit, Midnight in Paris. There you go. Maybe it was just the right time. People were, because it's no more light or sophisticated or kind of feel-goody than a lot of his other films of that ilk.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
It's just Midnight in Paris happened to hit at the right time, I guess.